There's a theological reason. And you have to be very convinced of that to choose
Yeah.
to do this next thing, which is to actually raise your children in a way that they're going to desire to have children. There are a number of massive defeaters, things that are going to infect your family and cause your children not to want to have kids. And that you have to be aware of these and you have to understand, how do you counteract each of these things? Okay. So the first one I would say is hyper individualism. So your kids are going to naturally desire to think about their lives as a kind of a canvas on which to express themselves in the most hyper individualistic way possible. I think the best example of this is hard to talk about today, but I think the best example of this that exists is what occurred within the LGBT. So you started with the LGB, which is the lesbian, and the LG, the gay, and the bisexual. These were sexual orientations that people were arguing very adamantly, like, are things you can't control. And we're not going to go into those details. Did a whole podcast on where that comes from. But that was somewhat understandable. There are clearly orientations that people experience that isn't something that they're directly choosing. I think there's reasons why it's happening. But then we started adding these choices at the end. Especially to me, the most dramatic example is Q, or what it means to be queer. And if you ever go online and really watch videos of people trying to explain what this is, trying to define what it means to be queer, usually you'll constantly hear them say, "Look, this is just a choice. Anybody can choose to be queer." And they really resist giving any kind of definitive description of what it means. But if you drill into it, I would say that this is how, as I've understood it, what it means to be queer is take the most non-gender conforming elements of your personality and preferences and to form the core of your identity, right? To be queer means to basically look at the way that you're built, things that you feel are most non-gender conforming, elements of your personality or even elements of your preferences, and say, I want to identify primarily with that part of my personality. You can still be totally heterosexual and be queer. This is why it's incredibly confusing for people to even understand what this is. How is this different than being gay or anything else? Well, it's really an extreme example of hyper individualism, basically saying, I want to take these elements, and that's become increasingly cool. There was a video that went viral a couple of weeks ago of Will Smith's son getting out of a limo, and he was wearing basically like an 8-year-old's dress, like a 8-year-old girl dress, and he's like, I don't know how old he is. He looks like a older teenage boy. And so this is what's so cool. Like, if you want to be really cutting edge in our culture, you want to take some shocking element of the other gender and then assimilate that into your kind of preferences, your style. If you do that, that kind of queer expression is considered increasingly cool, and it helps you to fully express yourself as an individual. Now, the problem with that is it makes it much less likely that you're going to get married to the opposite gender. When both genders are basically, moving towards one another in this way, the idea that we're going to understand and identify primarily as male and female, which creates families and creates strength and creates clarity, all of that gets blurred. And so you have to be aware that these things are coming for our kids. And so one of the things that you have to choose to do if you want your kids to want to become parents, to get married and want to have children, is you have to actually not just be neutral with regards to the gender binary, but you have to love the gender binary. You actually have to think, wow, it was incredibly good that God created male and female. We want to look at our sons and say, look, it's awesome that you're male. God designed you to be male for a reason. It's great to be a boy, and it's going to be great to be a man. And then when you're looking at your daughters, you're saying the same thing to them about being a female. It's amazing that God made you a female. I love the fact that God made you a female. It's amazing to be a girl. It's going to be amazing to be a woman someday. These are positive things. These are gifts from God. These are not things to reject or to play with in some kind of way that's going to make it much less likely that you will get to fully experience the gift of your gender. And so you have to see the gender binary as essentially a good thing. And this, of course, goes all the way back to that first page in Genesis, where we do see God create the male and female. So that's the first thing I think you have to be aware of, and you have to choose to do, is to say, if we're not trying to assume that individual self-expression is more valuable than embracing our God-given gender and our God-given gender roles. So that's the first thing. This is being challenged everywhere in culture, but I think if you go to Israel, by the way, you will. There's certainly elements of culture within Israel that have tried to embrace some of this kind of recent gender ideology, but within the Orthodox community, they're extremely resistant to this idea. They're very,
Mm,
and this I think this is part of they have within their culture the ability to really within their faith culture an ability to resist that I don't see as strong in the Christian world.